Hi, welcome back to Planning for a Career in Healthcare. I think we need to jump right in, and you need to get some content that is going to be of value to you. So today what I want to do is take a session and simply talk in general terms about the application for a healthcare program. Many programs today use what's called a holistic review of their candidates. What that means is that over the years, we've come to appreciate the fact that it's more important for our healthcare providers to be something beyond smart. I have to say that historically, and that may have been as recently as the early 80s when I was in medical school, that seemed to be the primary qualification of most students entering medical school. They were the smartest people in their high school, and then they were the smartest people in their undergraduate experience, and now that's what smart people did. You know, the ultimate academic goal, the ultimate academic peak to achieve was medical school. And so a lot of very, very smart people ended up going to medical school. And it turned out that a lot of those very, very smart people weren't really very comfortable talking to people. And that was a problem, because I think all of us can probably agree on, so in general, of some of the characteristics that we value in our healthcare providers. And I think if it's not number one on your list, it's probably in the top three, is that we want someone who's a good communicator. We want someone who can talk to us using words that we understand, who listens to us, who shows us that they've heard us, that they value the things that we've shared with them, and that they're going to incorporate our needs and our concerns into our healthcare plan. And so with that, programs now are being much more attentive to identifying individuals that are more than just smart, individuals that are good communicators, that are compassionate, that are aware, that are concerned, and so your ability to convey that, to communicate that to admissions committees in your application is very, very important. So with this holistic review now, we can think of the application as actually something that has essentially two big parts. One of those parts is the part that we're most familiar with. That whenever we think of health professions programs, we know, oh yeah, it's a lot of studying. Yeah, it's the academic part, or the cognitive part of the application. That includes all of the work that you've done in college, and it also includes your scores on any entrance exams. For medical school, the entrance exam is called the MCAT. For pharmacy school, it's called the PCAT. For dentistry, it's called the DAT. And for nursing school, it's called the HESI, and there are a number of other healthcare programs that require that you take the Graduate Record Exam, or GRE. So almost all the healthcare programs have some kind of entrance exam. So the consideration of your scoring of your entrance exam, and also then your transcript, your undergraduate academic performance, that's the cognitive part. Now, I don't want to minimize the importance of that. Academics remains incredibly, incredibly important, and you need to show academic excellence if you hope to be a competitive applicant for any of the health professions programs. Now, is it important that you have a 4.0 GPA? Does it ruin your chances if you have a C? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I don't want you to get discouraged or think that you have to give up your dreams because you had a bad fall semester of your freshman year. But so we're going to talk a little bit more in another episode, actually, about GPA and our academic work and how that's evaluated by admissions committees. But so our transcripts, our undergraduate academic performance, and our GREs are going to be that half of our application that is the cognitive portion. But I want to stress again that your academic performance, as much as we hear about it over and over, it's almost mythic how, like, what a huge challenge this is to be academically successful and be competitive academically. I want to really stress that your academics for most schools is only half of your consideration as a candidate. And that's incredibly important to keep in mind. So the other half, the half that for most people is much more difficult to kind of wrap your head around, that other half is as important. And frankly, I have to say that I think that's the half, that's the part where I'm most effective, potentially the biggest help for students, because having had that experience in a lot of different ways of working with that half of the application, I really think that that's the part that I maybe be most helpful, may be the most help in helping you understand. So what are the non-cognitive portions? Well, when you look, and I'm going to use the AMCAS, which is the standardized application for medical school. I'm going to use the AMCAS as kind of a model for applications. But in the AMCAS application, interestingly, the non-cognitive portion basically falls under two parts of the application. One of the parts is labeled experiences. And that's a really innocuous kind of label. It sounds like, well, okay, I've had some experiences. And they're interested. They're going to ask you to list experiences, and those will be primarily experiences that you've had since leaving high school. Now, in the AMCAS application, you get to list 15 different experiences. Now, for some of you, you may find that that's plenty. That when you think about the things that you've done in your life, you may think of, 7 or 8 things that you want to share with people. For others of you, you may find that 15 is just not nearly enough, that you have to have more time than that because, you've done so much. It can be a challenge in either way, and we can talk about that at some point. But when we talk about the kinds of experiences, and let's talk about that first before we talk about sort of the problems of arranging those experiences. But when we talk about the kinds of experiences, I think those categories are important to sort of be aware of and to think about. The first one, which doesn't get sort of included on a lot of lists, but which I think is critically important, is work. One of the things that we tend to think is that when we're creating an application for a health professions program, that everything on the application has to be somehow related to healthcare. And that's totally not the truth. All right, so we do so much of our lives until we're actually in healthcare. And even once we're in healthcare, a lot of our lives isn't about healthcare. But, before we enter healthcare, almost nothing in our lives is about healthcare. It's about life. And so when we think about experience, that's what I want you to sort of keep in mind with experiences. So when we talk about work experiences are really important. And I frequently tell students that every single job that you've ever had has in some way prepared you for a career in healthcare. Now, if you don't understand that, if an understanding of that statement doesn't immediately come to your mind, then I want you to take some time and think about that. A lot of times, what I use as an example of work is the kind of job that many students have had, the thing that no one thinks is at all relevant to a career in healthcare, and that's working in a pizza place. We have a pizza place here in Albuquerque called Dion's, and I always say, look, suppose you're a pepperoni slinger on the pizza assembly line at Dion's. I said, how has that job prepared you for a career in healthcare? It has. You are functioning as a part of a team. And in that job, you are aware that some days are good, where the team works well together and you produce a really great pizza. And there are other days where, something just isn't right. Somebody doesn't pull their weight. Somebody's in a bad mood and is just dogging it. They're not really working up to the caliber that they usually work up to. And the team doesn't function as effectively. So that's really important. That's an incredibly important experience to have, because all of us that are interested in careers in healthcare are one day going to be working as a part of a team. And so understanding how to be an effective team member is really, really important. And for many of you, you may someday be identified as the leader of that team. So to understand how to get a team to work together well is an incredibly important experience to have had. So work experience is something that we're going to include. Work is something that we're going to include in our list of experiences. The second that we're going to include, the second kind of broad category of experience that I need you to think about, is shadowing. Shadowing, I have to say, is critical. It has become an absolute expectation for virtually every health professions program. I will tell you with great confidence that you will not be accepted into medical school if you have not shadowed. Shadowing has become accepted as the gold standard of evidence that you have truly made an effort to investigate what the career is. When someone asks you, what do you understand a doctor does? Why do you want to be a doctor? What do you think they do? If you haven't shadowed, then it's going to be a stretch for them to think that you really do understand what a doctor does. Because that's what shadowing does. It gives us a chance to observe a physician taking care of someone, or it gives us a chance to observe a healthcare provider of any kind taking care of a patient. And through those observations and reflections on what we're seeing and sort of thinking about the challenges we face, then we begin to sort of understand how we might be suited to a career in healthcare. Work, shadowing. The third category of experiences, volunteer work. Volunteering is incredibly important, and it shows admissions committees that you're aware that the world is bigger than you, that you are a part of a society, and that where you are today, all of the advantages that you've had, everything that you've accomplished has been through the benefit of many of the things that our society has to offer. We also know that there are people in society that have had fewer advantages than us. And so with that, when we have the opportunity to give back, to possibly make someone else's life better, and in the process of making an individual's life better, making us as a society better, that's an important thing to sort of be aware of and to show people that you understand. Because after all, that is the kind of profession that you're entering. You will be entering a profession where you will be giving all the time, and you need to be good with that. So that's the importance of volunteering. So, work, shadowing, volunteering, research. Research is on many lists, and many students are very preoccupied with the need to do research. I will tell you, research is a great thing to have on your application, but for many medical schools, if you do not have a research experience, that is not a critical deficit in your application. The University of New Mexico, for example, prides itself on training primary care providers. They like seeing research on their candidate's application, but if they don't have it, that is not a major ding. So if you're interested in being a doctor, if you want to go out and sort of take care of people, if that's your goal, then research is probably a little bit less critical to your application. But you need to be able to explain that to people. The flip side of that is, if you hope someday to be a physician scientist, if you're thinking, yeah, I want to be one of those guys that really does sort of invent identify the next cure for some kind of cancer, then yeah, maybe an MD, PhD is kind of that combo that you're thinking of, in which case research is an absolute critical part of your undergraduate experience. Work, shadowing, volunteer, research, leadership. So any leadership experiences that you've had are incredibly valuable, and again, are really smiled on an application. Leadership, that's one of those things that I think when we think of healthcare, and we think of any of us as health professionals, we need to understand that not only are we going to be perceived as leaders within our team, and remember, regardless of your career in healthcare, at some point you may actually be asked to assume the leadership role in your healthcare team, and you need to be prepared to do that. And so experiences that you've had in leadership, and they can be in community organizations or undergraduate school organizations, any kind of social organization, any experience that you've had in leadership is going to be a big plus in your application. Working, shadowing, volunteering, research, leadership. And the last big category that I think of including in the experiences are interests or passions. And this is that kind of garbage can category where it's like, but wait, where do I put my black belt in Taekwondo? If you have a black belt in Taekwondo, man, I don't. But I certainly understand the commitment it takes to get that black belt in Taekwondo, the focus that it takes, and also the passion that it takes. And so that's something that has to be included in your application. People need to know about that. They also need to know that you have a life outside of medicine, because that's really important. We hear more and more about burnout in today's healthcare providers, and the critical need that for all of us to have interests outside of our profession, so that we have a way to walk away from the pressures and kind of let things go and recover from a hard day or a hard series of days. So that's the basics. Those are the basic parts of the application. I want to stop, but in future episodes, what we'll do is we'll look more closely at each one of those components, talk about them a little bit more thoroughly. Thanks a lot. Hope to see you next time.